What's going on, everybody? Today we're back talking about lumber prices, where they are today with the current tariff situation, and if lumber prices will crash in the future as we see inflation rise. We have a lot of economic topics to take a look at, from demand pull inflation, the current tariff situation, and what can happen in the future. But please hit the subscribe button for future content like this. Let's take a look. An article just came out with the Wall Street Journal talking about manufacturers blaming swelling tariffs for the current inflation problem. We saw President Trump sign tariffs on lumber and aluminum a couple years ago, and from there we've seen swelling prices, especially in lumber we've shown in other videos. The Biden administration said it's currently reviewing those tariffs. It'll be interesting to see what they do about that. But first, let's take a look what those tariffs have caused, how it relates to inflation, and some economic topics behind that. The Wall Street Journal talks about what manufacturers are doing to combat this current rising inflation. One thing is they're actually cutting payroll and they're struggling to find workers. The article even says it's silly that we have tariffs when we lack the current domestic supply to fulfill demand, which makes a lot of sense. We don't have enough wood in the US to fill wood demand. Why are we going to tax foreign suppliers of that when we are short supplied in the US itself? Go back to this 2019 Barron's article where it talks about why we put these tariffs in place to make ourselves more competitive to the Chinese imports and the Canadian imports on the lumber. However, with these tariffs, it just swells the price and actually stokes the inflation and really puts some gas on that fire. Talk about the economic theory behind what is happening. It goes back to Keynesian theory and demand pull inflation. And when we look at the causes of demand pull inflation, it is spot on that this is what we're going through. A quick increase in consumption and investment along extremely confident firms, increase in government spending, devaluation of the currency, expectation that inflation will be rising in the future, and excess in monetary growth, and a rise in the population. When we look at these factors, it is a perfect case of demand pull inflation. We have tons of stimulus money hitting the economy. People think the goods are just going to keep rising and rising, the cost of those goods and services, and demand pull inflation is really pulling this price of everything much higher. However, when we look at the history of demand pull inflation, prices don't go where you think. Eventually, prices plummet. Demand pull inflation in Keynesian theory is actually described as too many people chasing too few goods, and that couldn't be more true today. There are so many people chasing lumber for a new build, and there's just not enough lumber to obtain to build that house, so the price of lumber has skyrocketed. When you see this, you then need increased employment to ramp up the goods and services productions of those items. However, because we have incentives not to work and a labor shortage, we just can't get that ramped up production to bring down the cost of those goods. I even went back to 2001 to a professor of Columbia University to look at if tariffs could actually lead to a decrease in prices in the long term. And he said tariffs always lead to a sharp decrease in the price of those goods and services and the cost of living. He says that in economies that are not developed, you do not see this decrease in price. However, in a developed economy like the US, you will eventually see a sharp decrease in the price of those goods and services. And I think we're going to see that in the next 12 to 18 months. History often repeats itself, but we've never seen this type of monetary infusion from the federal government, and also just the massive growth of the money supply, countered with the incentive of people not to return to work, especially these lower paying, low skill, but higher risk jobs like you see at the sawmills. It's going to be a long time, I think, until we see that increased production that will lead to that sharp decrease in prices. So I'm not so sure these tariffs are actually driving the price increase. Either the other incentives out there for people to return to work and increase the production of these goods that are needed, drive the prices down to a normalized level. Continue to monitor the situation and bring back some more economic theory into future videos. If you found this informative, please hit the subscribe button, and I'll talk to you soon.